The sound of the knife striking the oak board sounded like the frantic heartbeat of a dying monster. Click, click, click. Steady, cold, and precise to the millimeter. The air in the kitchen of Le Sommeil at 8 p.m. on a Friday was thick, heavier than lead. Searing heat rose from the 12 industrial gas burners running at full capacity, breathing into my face like a dragon. The smell of burnt butter. The smell of golden fried garlic. The smell of red wine reducing in the saucepans, and lurking somewhere was the sour smell of fear, sweating from the young prep cooks. 2 minutes to pan-seared foie gras for table 4, I shouted, my voice echoing against the gleaming white tiled walls. Oui, chef. The chant responded in unison, but I heard the tremor in it. They weren't afraid of the flames licking above their heads. They were afraid of me, Mark, executive sous chef. The man known as the surgical hands of Les Sommets. I held the silver tweezers, carefully placing a delicate sprig of purple thyme onto the fatty foie gras dripping with grease. It had to sit at exactly a 45-degree angle, no more, no less. Perfection was not a choice here. It was the law of survival. I wiped a bead of sweat threatening to run into my eye, trying to steady my breathing amidst this chaotic furnace. For the last 5 years, I had lived, breathed, and bled within these 4 walls. I had turned this place from an outdated French bistro into a 3 Michelin-star culinary sanctuary in New York. But tonight, something felt wrong. A bad premonition ran down my spine, cold as a freshly sharpened sashimi knife. The doors burst open. The heavy thud of oak made the noisy kitchen instantly fall silent. All activity ceased. The sizzling of oil became jarringly loud. Kevin walked in. The expensive navy blue Armani suit hugged his slightly portly frame, contrasting sharply with our stained white aprons. He wasn't alone. Behind him were the restaurant manager with a pale face and 2 large security guards. His overpowering cologne drowned out the delicate scent of the Wagyu beef resting on the rack. "Stop," Kevin said, his voice not loud but enough to freeze the room. "Kill the burners." I looked up, my hand still gripping the tweezers. "We are in the middle of the rush, Kevin," I said, my voice calm but my eyes narrowing. "The guest at table 4 is waiting for the main course." Kevin smirked. A twisted smile, holding the sick gloating I had seen kindling in his eyes for the past 6 months, ever since his father died and left this empire to his useless son. "The guest at table 4 won't be eating that, Mark." He walked slowly toward me, the sound of Italian leather shoes clicking on the slippery tile floor sounded like a judge's gavel. He stopped right in front of me, close enough for me to see the red veins in his eyes, cloudy from alcohol and stimulants. "Why?" I asked, though I had already vaguely guessed the terrible script about to unfold. Kevin didn't answer immediately. He signaled to the manager. The manager, trembling, stepped forward, placing a clear plastic Ziploc bag on the gleaming stainless steel counter right next to my perfect plate of foie gras. Inside the bag was a dead rat, soaking wet, filthy, and disgusting. A gasp of horror rose from the prep cooks standing behind me. "I found this in walk-in cooler number 2, Kevin said, his voice feigning trembling rage, but I saw the corner of his mouth twitching to suppress a laugh. "Right inside the crate of truffles you personally imported this morning." I looked at the rat, then looked straight into his eyes. My facial muscles didn't flinch. "You know cooler number 2 is the only area with fingerprint locks for the sous chef and head chef, right, Kevin?" I asked, my voice ice cold. And this morning, I was the only one checking the inventory on camera. "Camera?" Kevin laughed loudly, the sound echoing through the silent kitchen. "Unfortunately, the camera system went under emergency maintenance since yesterday morning, Mark." He leaned down, close to my ear, whispering in a voice reeking of expensive cognac. "I don't need real proof, Mark. I just need an excuse." He stood up straight, turning to look at the entire staff standing like statues. "Mark has seriously violated food safety regulations," he screamed, acting out the role of the devoted owner betrayed. "He is trying to ruin the reputation my family has built for 30 years. He wants to poison our customers." The accusations fell like boulders. I looked at the faces around me, the prep cooks I had guided by hand, the people I had protected when they made mistakes. They lowered their heads. No one dared to look me in the eye. They knew the truth, but they also needed this job to pay rent in this suffocatingly expensive city. Their silence was the sharpest knife stabbing me in the back right now. "You're fired, Mark," Kevin declared, pointing to the back door. "Immediately. Pack your things and get out of here before I call the police to throw you out for property damage." I stood still for a few seconds. Anger flared in my chest, hot as the blue gas flame. I wanted to grab his collar. I wanted to smash that fake, arrogant face into this cold, stainless steel table. I wanted to scream in his face that I was the one who saved this restaurant, while he was busy burning money on wild parties. But I didn't. I took a deep breath. The smell of burnt butter was still there, but now it had the bitter taste of betrayal. I slowly placed the silver tweezers on the table, very gently. Not a sound. I reached behind my neck, untying the knot of my pristine white apron. The apron I had considered my armor for half a decade. I folded it, square, flat. Then I placed it next to the bag with the dead rat. A painfully ironic contrast. Absolute cleanliness lying next to staged filth. "Take care, Kevin," I said, my voice low, only enough for the two of us to hear. "I pray this empire is sturdy enough to support your ego." I didn't look back. I turned and walked away. My footsteps echoed steadily on the tile floor. Clack, clack, clack. I walked past the pitying gazes, past the cooling saucepans, past the dream of 3 Michelin stars shattering into pieces. The back door opened. The cold November wind of New York rushed in, hitting my face, sharp as a razor. The door closed behind me with a dry slam. The end. Or at least that was what Kevin thought.
The alley behind Le Sommet was dark and damp. It reeked of rotting food waste, underground sewage, and the pungent metallic smell of discarded oyster shells. It was a complete contrast to the luxury and splendor of the marble-floored dining room just a wall away. I stood leaning against the rough brick wall, letting the cold seep through my thin shirt. My hands were still trembling slightly, not from the cold,
but from the extreme suppressed rage. I looked down at my hands under the yellow streetlight, flickering constantly as if about to die. These hands were full of small scars, burns from hot oil splashing, cuts from the knife slipping while prepping fish at 3 a.m. Every scar was a lesson. Every scar was a sacrifice. I remembered the first day I stepped into this kitchen 5 years ago. Back then, Kevin's father, Mr. Pierre, was still alive.
He was a legend, a man who respected ingredients more than his own life. He had seen the fire in my eyes. "You have the hands of a pianist, but the heart of a boxer." He had said that when handing me my first apron. We built this menu together. I slept on the cold kitchen floor for 3 weeks straight, just to watch the consommé pot until it reached crystal clarity. I tasted thousands of spoons of sauce until my tongue went numb, just to find the perfect ratio between the tartness of yuzu and the sweetness of wild honey. All that effort, all those sleepless nights, now erased by a dead rat and a smirk from a useless son. I pulled a pack of cigarettes from my pocket. It was crushed. I lit one, the red dot flickering in the dark, like the eye of a demon. I took a deep drag, letting the acrid smoke fill my lungs, chasing away the smell of rich butter still clinging to my hair. The phone in my pocket buzzed. A message. It was from Sarah, the pastry chef, the only one who perhaps still had a conscience in that hell. "You left, and he forced us to use the expired beef batch in cooler number 3. I read the message, smoke escaping through my teeth. He said the red wine sauce would cover the rancid smell. Don't worry. I gave a faint smile, a smile devoid of any joy. I knew this would happen. Ever since Mr. Pierre died and Kevin took over, everything started rotting from the inside. He cut costs on fresh imported ingredients. He replaced Italian truffles with cheap ones from China. He forced staff to reuse frying oil until it was black as sewage water. How many times had I secretly thrown that garbage away? How many times had I spent my own money buying fresh vegetables at the farmer's market at dawn so customers wouldn't notice the difference? I tried to save the honor of the name Les Sommets, while he only cared about squeezing every cent of profit to burn on supercars and long-legged models. I threw the cigarette into a puddle at my feet. It hissed slightly and died.
I pulled my collar up, walked out of the alley, and merged into the rushing crowd on Manhattan Avenue. The bright neon lights from giant billboards shone down on the wet street, creating patchy streaks of color like a chaotic, abstract painting. I stopped in front of a cheap convenience store on the corner. My stomach grumbled. Ironically, the man who just cooked dishes worth hundreds of dollars was starving. I walked in, the smell of cheap detergent and old hot dogs assaulting my nose. I bought a cold sandwich and a bottle of water. I sat on the rickety plastic chair by the window, looking out at the street. The sandwich was dry as straw in my mouth. The cold cuts were salty and full of preservatives. But I swallowed. I swallowed the humiliation. I swallowed the injustice. I took out my phone, scrolling through social media.
And there it was. It was faster than I thought. On Kevin's personal Twitter page with millions of followers, a new post had popped up 10 minutes ago. Heartbroken to announce the firing of sous chef Mark for serious violations of food safety. At Le Sommet, we do not tolerate negligence. Hashtag food safety, hashtag Michelin star, hashtag new chapter. Attached was the photo of the dead rat lying next to my apron. Thousands of likes, hundreds of comments cursing me.
Filthy chef. Kick him out of the industry. Disgusting. I will never eat anywhere that hires him. My career, my reputation, everything I built with sweat and tears, destroyed by him with just a click. He didn't just want to fire me. He wanted to kill me in this profession. He wanted to ensure I could never lift my head again at any restaurant in New York or even the entire U.S. I looked at my reflection in the dusty glass window.
A 35-year-old man, hair slightly messy, dark circles under his eyes from lack of sleep, gnawing on a cheap sandwich. I looked pathetic, exactly like the failure Kevin wanted everyone to see. But he forgot one thing, or perhaps he never knew, that before I held a kitchen knife, I had held something else. That my meticulousness, my obsession with perfection, was not just for cooking. It was a habit forged from another world, more brutal.
Colder and more ruthless than this kitchen of hell. I put the sandwich down. I wiped my mouth with a rough paper napkin. I reached into the inner pocket of my coat. Not to take out the latest smartphone I used to contact suppliers, but an old flip phone, pitch black, a burner phone that no one noticed. I flipped it open. The monochrome screen lit up with a pale blue glow. There was only a single contact saved in the directory. I pressed the call button.
The ringtone sounded. 1 ring. 2 rings. Verify identity. A robotic, distorted voice spoke from the other end. Agent 492, I said, my voice deepening, no longer the voice of sous chef Mark. Code blue rare. There was the sound of typing on the other end. Confirmed. Welcome back, Agent Mark. Report status. I looked through the glass, gazing toward the Le Sommet building, glowing in the distance.
It looked like a magnificent castle ruling the hill. But I knew beneath the foundation was a sewer system full of rats, and Kevin, he was the Rat King. The target has taken the bait, I said, my voice colder and sharper than my best Japanese knife. He just cut the final tie. He thinks he removed a threat, but he just opened the gates of hell himself. Your orders, the voice on the other end asked. I looked at my reflection again. The tired look was gone, replaced by the eyes of a hunter watching his prey step into a trap. Activate the Le Summit file. Begin Phase 2, Evidence Collection Net. And prepare Team D. Copy that. Good luck, Agent. The call ended. I folded the phone shut. A small click sounded, crisp as the cocking of a pistol. I stood up, adjusting my collar. I threw the rest of the sandwich into the trash. The bitter taste of betrayal in my mouth was gone, replaced by another flavor, sweeter, colder, and more addictive than any 3-star dessert. It was the taste of revenge, and this dish, dear Kevin, will be served cold. 30 days. That was exactly how long it had been since I walked out the back door of Les Sommet. 30 days passed in silence. No statement to the press. No labor dispute lawsuit.
I disappeared from the New York culinary map like steam rising from a hot pan. Food critics speculated I had quit the profession. Leeching bloggers wrote long obituaries about the downfall of a talent. And Kevin? He was enjoying his days forged in fake glory. I stood across the street, hiding in the shadows of an awning opposite. The clock struck 9 p.m. Le Sommet was still blazing with lights.
The stylized neon sign of the mountain peak still shone proudly, but with the eyes of someone who had spent a lifetime scrutinizing the smallest details, I saw the cracks. The letter E in Sommet was flickering slightly, a negligence Mr. Pierre would never have accepted for even a second. The red carpet at the entrance had a dark stain, probably wine spilled last night, but not yet cleaned. The doorman leaned against the pillar, sneaking looks at his phone instead of watching for VIP guests. The steel discipline, which used to be the backbone of this place, had shattered. I adjusted my tie. Today, I wasn't wearing a chef's coat. I wore an ash-gray suit, hand-tailored, fitting like a second skin. I didn't come to cook. I came to observe the death of an empire. I crossed the street. The December wind slipped through my wool coat, but my heart was colder than that. I pushed the door open. The wind chime tinkled, a sound painfully familiar.
The air inside was warm, but the scent had changed. Before, the lobby always smelled faintly of fresh lilies and natural beeswax candles, and now the smell of cheap air freshener was overwhelming, trying to cover up something musty from the carpet.
The receptionist, a brand new face I had never met, looked up at me with an industrial smile. "Hello, sir. Do you have a reservation?" "No," I replied, my eyes looking past her shoulder straight into the main dining room. "I'm here to see the owner." "Mr. Kevin is currently busy with guests. Do you have an appointment?" "Tell him Mark is here to pick up a forgotten item."
I cut her off, my voice gentle but heavy enough to freeze the smile on her lips. The name Mark seemed to be a taboo word here. She fumblingly picked up the phone. While waiting, I walked slowly into the bar area. I ran my finger over the marble counter. Sticky, a thin film of dried sugar and alcohol hadn't been wiped off. I brought my finger to my nose to smell. Artificial lemon scent from cheap glass cleaner. He had changed the chemical supplier. This type was half the price, but twice as toxic and left residue on surfaces. Well, well, well. A mocking voice rang out from the spiral staircase. I turned around. Kevin was walking down, holding a glass of champagne, his face flushed with alcohol. He looked fatter than the last time I saw him. His belly bulged out behind the tight silk shirt. "Look who it is." He laughed loudly, drawing the attention of a few diners nearby. The sewer rat has returned to the old nest. He walked closer to me, the smell of alcohol assaulting my face. "What are you doing here? Begging for a recommendation letter or applying for a dishwasher position?" I lightly dusted my sleeve, calmly facing his cloudy eyes. "I came to get some tax documents left in my personal locker. Labor laws require you to store them."
"Tax documents?" Kevin laughed, a scornful laugh. "You are always boringly principled, Mark. That's why you're just a cook, and I'm the owner." He took a sip of wine, then tilted his head, looking at me with fake pity. "You know, since you left, revenue increased by 20%. "Really?" I asked back, my eyes glancing at the plates of leftover food being carried into the kitchen by waiters. On the plate, more than half the salmon remained. The sauce had split, grease floating on top. Customers didn't leave it because they were full, Kevin. They left it because it was terrible. Of course. Kevin raised his chin. I optimized the process, cut out the useless frills you used to draw up. Like food safety, for example? I asked, my voice light. Kevin's face hardened for a second. Then he sneered. "Don't preach morals to me. Here, I am the law." He leaned close to my face, lowering his voice to a whisper, his breath reeking of raw oysters. "And let me tell you this news so you can despair completely. Tomorrow is the periodic inspection by the health department, and I have taken care of everything." My heart slowed a beat. The fish had taken the bait. "Inspector Ross?" I asked, pretending to accidentally mention the name. Kevin's eyes lit up with surprise,
then turned to smugness.
You know old Ross, too? Yes, that greedy old man. A thick envelope, a lifetime of free dinners, and the A+ certificate is securely in my pocket. He patted my shoulder, a condescending gesture that was nauseating. That's how the world works, Mark. Money buys cleanliness. You can scrub the kitchen until the tiles wear out, but I just need to sign a check. I looked at his hand on my shoulder. His fingernails had black rims.
If the restaurant owner has dirty nails, how dirty is the kitchen? You're right, Kevin. I nodded, smiling a thin, rare smile. Money can buy many things, including your freedom. Kevin frowned, not understanding the hidden meaning behind my words. What the hell are you talking about? Nothing. I took a step back, shaking his hand off my shoulder. I'll get my things and leave immediately. Won't disturb your empire. Hurry up.
Kevin waved his hand, shooing me away, like shooing bad luck. Don't let my guests see your funeral face. It ruins the palate. I walked past him, heading straight for the kitchen area. The swinging doors opened, and that smell hit me. Not the aroma of cuisine. It was the smell of rotting disguised. The fishy smell of seafood not stored at the right temperature. The burnt smell of oil fried too many times.
And beneath it all was the characteristic stench of sewers clogged for days. I walked into the familiar kitchen. The floor was slippery. I almost slipped on a patch of oil right in the main aisle. No one bothered to wipe it up. The chefs were running around like headless chickens. They no longer had the rhythm of a symphony orchestra. They were struggling to survive the shift. I saw Sarah at the pastry corner. She looked gaunt, dark circles deep under her eyes. When she saw me, she froze, almost dropping the piping bag. "Chef," she whispered, out of old habit. I put a finger to my lips, signaling silence. I walked past the hotline. My eyes recorded everything faster than a scanner. Refrigerator thermometer number 1 read 8 degrees Celsius. Safety standard is under 4 degrees Celsius. Raw chicken was sitting next to lettuce on the same prep table. Salmonella would be feasting tonight. Trash cans overflowing, lids open, flies buzzing. And in the darkest corner, right under the stove, I saw a mousetrap. There was a rat stuck in it, still twitching in death. Not a fake rat brought in by Kevin like last time. This was a real rat, a new resident of this 3-star restaurant. Kevin was right about one thing. He had changed this place. He turned it from a sanctuary of art into a potential plague den. I walked to my old locker at the end of the hall. It hadn't been broken into yet. I opened it. Empty inside, except for a small black notebook I intentionally left behind. But I didn't come for the notebook. I pulled out a tiny device from my suit pocket, the size of a button. It was a micro-surveillance camera, specialized equipment of the Bureau. I attached it to the gap between the locker and the ceiling, the angle covering the entire delivery area and the walk-in cooler door. The red signal light blinked once and then went out. It started recording. It would record Kevin accepting low-quality frozen foods tomorrow morning. It would record him handing the envelope to the corrupt Inspector Ross.
It would be the final nail in the coffin of Le Sommeil. I closed the locker door, turned to walk out. I passed Sarah again. I stopped for a second, enough for her to hear. Tomorrow, if possible, call in sync. Sarah opened her eyes wide, looking at me, fear mixed with understanding flashing in her depths. She nodded slightly, a nod almost invisible. I walked out of the kitchen. Kevin was still standing at the bar, laughing loudly with a group of beautiful female guests. He saw me walking out, raising his glass to mock. "Found the self-esteem you dropped, Mark." The whole group of guests laughed along with him. I stopped, adjusting my suit button. I looked at him, my eyes no longer holding anger, only pity for a death row inmate eating his last meal. "Enjoy tonight, Kevin," I said, my voice deep and resonant.
"Champagne tastes best when drunk before the ship sinks." Kevin frowned, the smile dying on his lips. But before he could react, I pushed the door and walked out. The freezing air of New York had never felt so pleasant. I pulled out the burner phone. "Agent 492 reporting," I said as I walked quickly toward the subway station. "Camera in position. Confirmed level 1 violations. Temperature deviation. Cross-contamination. Pest infestation."
And confirmed subject Kevin admitted to bribery. Team D, prepare to launch at 1900 tomorrow. Copy that. The voice from the other end rang out. Tomorrow will be a long day, Chef. But by the very rot it was trying to cover up. 1900 hours. 0 hour. The atmosphere inside Le Sommeil was as taut as a violin string about to snap. But it was the kind of tension masked by industrial smiles and the clinking of glasses. Kevin stood right at the main entrance, hands in his pockets, trying to look relaxed, but sweat was already beading on his forehead under the crystal chandelier. A black sedan pulled up in front. The door opened. Inspector Ross stepped out. A middle-aged man with a potbelly, a greasy face, and beady eyes always darting around. He didn't bring a briefcase with testing tools like thermometers or UV lights. He only brought a slimy smile. "Hello, Mr. Ross." Kevin rushed out to greet him, shaking hands warmly like meeting his own father. "Honored to welcome you to Le Sommeil." "Hello, Kevin,"
Ross replied, his voice raspy with the smell of tobacco. "Heard you changed personnel." "Yes, a little restructuring to improve quality." Kevin winked, then discreetly shoved a thick envelope into Ross's hand. I watched it all from the tablet screen in the black van parked on the corner 200 meters away. "Camera number 1 recorded bribery act," I said into the radio. "Copy." The vice captain's voice sounded in my ear. "Awaiting orders."
On the screen, Ross and Kevin walked into the kitchen.
The play began. Ross walked past the prep counters like a tourist riding a horse to view flowers. He didn't bend down to check the drains. He didn't open the trash can lids. He didn't even bother to look at the refrigerator thermometer, showing a red alert. Clean. Ross nodded, patting the stainless steel counter, where I knew for sure Kevin had just made the staff wipe with strong bleach to mask the smell. Very professional process. Thank you, sir. Kevin grinned. We always put hygiene first. Ross pulled out a gold-plated fountain pen. He placed the evaluation sheet on the table. The nib glided on the paper. A+. Perfect score. Congratulations, Kevin.
Ross said loudly, enough for the whole kitchen to hear. Le sommet maintains its form. Kevin sighed in relief, his shoulders slumping. He turned to the manager. Pop the champagne. Tonight, everyone gets a bonus. The sound of the cork, pop, rang out crisply. Sparkling wine spilled from the bottle mouth, flowing onto the floor, mixing with the layer of dirty grease not yet cleaned. Kevin raised his glass above his head. To a new beginning, to purity, he screamed, his eyes full of victory. That was my signal. Action, I ordered. I opened the van door. 12 agents wearing black windbreakers with bright yellow FDA logos on the back simultaneously jumped down from the 2 camouflage trucks behind. We moved fast and silent, like a pack of wolves hunting at night. I led the way, holding my badge, a Glock 19 tucked at my hip, in case Kevin's security got aggressive. I pushed hard on the main door of Le Sommet. The heavy oak door slammed against the wall, creating a sound like thunder. Boom! That sound cut through the melodious jazz music and the noisy laughter. All eyes turned to the door. Kevin was holding the wine glass, the smile frozen on his lips. He saw me. But he didn't recognize me immediately. I wasn't wearing the gray suit anymore. I wore tactical gear, a light bulletproof vest inside, a shiny federal agent badge on my chest. What the hell is this? Kevin screamed, his face flushing red with anger. Security! Throw these people out! 2 big security guards rushed forward, but my 2 agents were faster. With just 2 basic arm locks, the 2 guards were pinned face down on the floor. Federal Food and Drug Administration. I shouted, my voice booming, 10 times more powerful than the voice calling orders in the kitchen back in the day. Everyone, stay still. This is an emergency search warrant. Silence engulfed the dining room. Guests began to panic, whispering loudly. Kevin rushed towards me, wine splashing from his glass onto the floor. You are Mark, he stammered, his eyes widening as if about to pop out of their sockets. What game are you playing? Did you hire actors? I stepped in front of him. The distance was only a handbreadth. I looked straight into his eyes, my gaze sharp as a scalpel. I'm not acting, Kevin. I held the badge right in front of his face. Special Agent Mark Anderson, National Food Safety Task Force. I went undercover here
for 5 years to investigate the interstate money laundering dirty meat ring your father headed. Kevin's face turned from red to white as a sheet of paper. The crystal glass in his hand dropped. Crash! The sharp, shattering sound. Impossible! He mumbled, backing away. You are a chef. You are just a chef. I am a good chef, I said, taking another step. But I am an even better agent. I turned to my team.
Seal all exits. Confiscate all ledgers. Check walk-in cooler number 3 immediately. Yes, sir. Agents spread throughout the restaurant. Guests were asked to leave in an orderly manner. Screams and stomping footsteps broke the fake glamour. In the kitchen, Inspector Ross was trying to sneak out the back door, but 2 agents blocked his way. Going somewhere in a hurry, Inspector? I called out.
Ross turned around, sweat pouring down his forehead. Mark, listen to me. This is just a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? I pulled out the tablet, playing the video of him taking the envelope 5 minutes ago. Is this a misunderstanding? Ross collapsed onto a chair, his face drained of blood. The search team leader stepped out from the cooler, holding a chunk of black beef, reeking of a strong, foul odor.
He threw the meat on the kitchen table, right in front of Kevin. Premium Kobe beef, is it? I asked, voice sarcastic. Expired 6 months ago. Labels tampered with. You fed customers trash, Kevin. Kevin trembled, leaning back against the cold stove wall. I didn't know. It was the supplier. Don't deny it. I cut him off, voice hardening. I have recordings of you directing staff to use chemicals to bleach the rotten smell.
I have video of you ordering people to put a dead rat in my locker. You have committed 15 federal offenses, including bribery of officials, commercial fraud, and endangering public health. I pulled out the handcuffs. Cold metal clicked against each other. I spun Kevin around, pressing his face against the wall. You have the right to remain silent. I read him his Miranda rights, a sense of satisfaction surging in every word. Anything you say can and will be used against you in court. The sound of handcuffs locking his wrists rang out. Click. The sweetest sound I had ever heard. Better than the pop of champagne. Better than the sizzling of steak on a hot pan. It was the sound of justice. Kevin hung his head, sobbing like a child deprived of his favorite toy. I turned to look at the kitchen staff standing huddled in the corner, terrified. I looked at Sarah.
She was looking at me with eyes full of shock mixed with admiration. You all are not at fault, I said gently to them. Go home. This nightmare is over. 2 hours later, the chaos had subsided,
but the remnants of the storm remained. Police cars with flashing blue and red lights still filled the street, dyeing the space in a ghostly shade. Kevin and Ross had been taken away.
The customers had dispersed, leaving behind unfinished tables, half-drunk wine glasses. Le Summit was now empty, cold, and dead. I stood in front of the main door. In my hand was a roll of bright red tape, reading "Sealed by Federal Bureau of Investigation." I pulled a long strip of tape, pasted diagonally across the two luxurious oak doors. The sound of the tape screeching sounded like tearing fabric.
I pasted a lemon-yellow notice. Operation suspended due to serious health violations. It covered the proud 3-star Michelin logo on the glass. I stepped back to admire my masterpiece. It wasn't as beautiful as the pan-seared foie gras, but it was 1,000 times cleaner. Snow began to fall. The first snowflakes of the season, pure white, falling onto the black asphalt of New York. It covered the dirty red carpet.
It covered the messy footprints of the arrest. I adjusted my coat collar, feeling the cold seep into my flesh, but feeling strangely warm inside. I pulled out my phone. This time, it was my personal phone. I dialed the chief. "Hello, Mark speaking. Report, Operation Cold Kitchen complete. Subject arrested, evidence secured. Le Summit restaurant is officially closed permanently." "Good job, Mark," the chief said.
Do you want to rest for a few days? I looked up at the night sky where snowflakes were dancing under the streetlights. I thought about the smell of burnt butter, thought about the sound of the knife hitting the cutting board, thought about the blue flame I once loved madly. Maybe that love was still there, but not here, and not right now. "No need, Chief," I replied. "Send me the next file."
There are many filthy kitchens out there that need cleaning. I put the phone in my pocket. I turned my back on Le Summit. I didn't turn my head to look at it one last time. It belonged to the past.
And I am the best chef for that dish.